So the paper that covers the individual components follows the conclusion of the budget round, follows consideration of priorities reflected in that budget round and referred to in the paper, and it means that I can now bring forward today the initial staffing priority areas at the first opportunity for you to be consulted on them. As the Chair has already said, these proposals mean an increase in the GLA Establishment. Fixed-term posts are already, number of fixed-term posts are already on the establishment, and what it means therefore in net terms is an increase in permanent posts of 28 posts, taking our establishment from a figure of 895 to 923. In these areas that I'm consulting on today, those areas being housing and land, environment, external relations, and 2 mayor's office posts. In terms of budgetary cost, allowance is made in the GLA budget for the cost of these posts amounting to 1.96 million. That's already reflected in the budget. But it is just worth saying, no doubt we'll say again as we go through the housing and land paperwork, that 10 of the posts that we're talking about today, which are the Royal Docks posts, are all externally funded from EZ income that will come through, as well as some rough sleeping costs which CLG will be paying for. Clearly, this is an increase in staffing and begs the obvious question, which I'll no doubt continue to ask about as we move through them, of is it really necessary? And I think I'd say just at the beginning is that what we've consistently tried to do, is not to increase permanent posts where that's possible, and we've done that against the background of there being uncertainties about funding, or where there have been short-term funding provided by the government, and where, for example, there's been pre- and post-election uncertainty. But in doing that, what we've been doing is placing huge reliance on short-term posts. So there are, as you can see from the figures that we included on the back of the covering paper, 158 short-term posts alongside the 737 permanent posts that exist at the moment. And that makes up the 895 figure. We can't continue to operate like that. Partly because we have a protocol about what short-term post means, which takes us on to a 2-year point maximum, but more substantively because A, we've been growing, particularly since 2011-12, when we took on additional responsibilities and additional staffing, and the LDA was abolished when the HCA London came into the organisation. Secondly, because we have got additional resources. We can talk about housing when we come to it, but that's an example. Growth deal is another example. Thirdly, because there are devolution developments actually now and in prospect this year. Fourthly, because primarily we've got a whole batch of new mayoral priorities that we've been working through in the budget. And finally, because there are bedrock increases of things like FOI, of public pressure through correspondence and through mayor's questions, etc., etc. So we can't keep relying, as we have been relying, on short-term increases, and hence the net increase proposed of 28 posts in this initial batch. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jacobs. A couple of questions from me, and then I'll throw it to members if they want to pick it up. How many of these positions will be hosted at City Hall, and how many will have to go elsewhere?
Well, I can't answer that off the top of my head. The Royal Docks posts we do not plan to have in City Hall at all. I think the rest would almost certainly be in City Hall, or, as we've said in the papers, we are going to probably almost certainly take a space in Union Street, or additional space in Union Street, and therefore some restacking is probably going to be considered as we move through the next few months, and then some of the posts might be in Union Street.
The paper makes reference to Union Street, and it talks about that being at nil cost. Of course, it's part of the GLA family, but of course there is an opportunity cost, because if we've got staff in there ourselves, it means that we can't let that space commercially. Have we estimated how much that is going to cost us not doing that?
We get, in fact, charged what the cost of Union Street is, so it's probably our cost.
Yes, indeed.
It's probably a very good proxy for the opportunity cost, and like I say, what the cost would be of the extra space.
Well, yes. I mean, when I was chairing the Fire Authority, one of the things that we were looking at doing was renting out space in Union Street to commercial organisations as a way of making up budget shortfalls. If we're putting GLA staff in there, clearly we're not making money from that. So have we estimated how much money we will not be making because of putting GLA staff into Union Street?
All I've got is an estimate of what people would charge us.
Okay, and that is what?
And at the present, if the space equates, we think, to about 81 extra desks in the space, but it's not to say how many desks we put there, they've estimated, they've advised us that the charge is £7,500 per desk, and in a full year that would cost an additional £608,000. There is uncertainty of timing of any move to Union Street, and therefore the GLA budget does include an additional provision of £600,000. Just rounded it down.
It may just be worth adding to that. I mean, obviously you're right that if there's a space that's not taken by the GLA, then the Fire Authority could in principle let it out to some other organisation. Obviously there are issues about whichever organisations it's appropriate to come into the building, and the activities that might need to take place to provide some separation within the building, as for example has been done with the Pension Fund Authority, who are based at Union Street. And so it's probably not as simple as just looking at the revenue cost, because there would be other considerations.
Okay. I'll come to you in a second, Tom. The other question that I had was on, because what we were recommended to do under item 5 is to respond to the head of paid service on the proposed additions, and we're going to do that in the subsequent papers anyway. But the second one is about the responding to the head of paid service on the proposal to create a new chief digital officer and new mayoral research officer, and it's that latter post I want to ask you about. That is proposed as a grade 8 position, and the role itself is monitoring social media primarily. Why is that position a grade 8? That seems a bit high to me.
It's yet to be evaluated, so it may not be a grade 8, but it's proposed as a grade 8 at the moment, because we've looked at other posts in the Mayor's office that it might be comparable to, but we have, it's the evaluation is yet to be confirmed.
Okay. I'm slightly uncomfortable approving that then on the basis that it hasn't been evaluated. The reason I'm going at that is that a grade 8 position in the political groups in the GLA is a deputy head of office position, which has line management responsibility. This looks like a research role rather than a management role. So I would quibble.
At best.
Well, I don't even think 7. I think it's a 6. And I'm wondering why it's been brought before us if it hasn't been evaluated yet. How many of the other posts haven't been evaluated yet?
Off the top of my head, I can't answer that, but we quite often bring posts here, where we, in order to get on with the consultation, we say we need to continue to look at the grading to make sure we're accurate.
Because obviously, isn't that, Chairman, the purpose of the consultation is that we can consult and give indicative things, and then the Assembly can feed that back to the head of paid service, who's then able to take that into account. And if the committee is expressing that opinion, then I'm sure Jeff will take that into account.
Tom?
So I'll bring mine back on all the other papers.
Yes.
Sorry?
Could I ask, please, about the apparent inconsistencies between paragraph 3.2 and 4.5? 3.2 says I'm not in a position to detail those proposals or staffing numbers at this stage. But in 4.5, you say all proposed new roles are affordable, including the plans for future years. But if you don't know, in 3.2, you don't know what you're going to be appointing and what space they're going to accommodate, how can you therefore say in 4.5 that you have made arrangements for it?
First of all, 3.2 is clearly saying there are other proposals which I have reflected in the latter part of the paper in 4.17 about what is potentially to come and which I'm not able to consult on today. I'm very happy to enlarge on that if you want me to. 4.5 is primarily telling you that the proposals before you today are fully covered in the budget. As to the potential residual question which still arises from what I think you've asked, which is, well, how can you know about the stuff that you're not able to talk about in detail today? Well, we have made budget provision which will be tested further when we are able to come forward with a more detailed proposal. So it's perfectly normal to make budget provision for anticipated expenditure, be it programme or staffing, which you then test in more detail as you go further forward. We do it on any number of MDs, where you look in more detail once you've set budget provision at the start of the year. Government departments do it all the time. I did it when I was in government department. We do it here. It's not at all dissimilar from doing the same thing.
Just because they may be lax in government doesn't mean that we should be
lax.
laxity,
It's about budget provision.
I think, Chairman, I think what 3.2 is trying to say is that where we have the proposals, we know that they are within the budget that's been set in the particular directorate in question. So when we look in a moment at housing and land, what David will be able to reassure about is that the budget that has been set for 17-18 also gives the viewed budget forward in future years, and the posts that are proposed there are affordable in that, and that's what we're trying to say.
How nice it would have been, Mr. Bellamy, if in 3.2 it had said, I'm not in a position to detail those proposals, but we are budgeting X 100,000 for X number of staff, rather than have this general point. And similarly, again in 4.4, talking about the, I beg your pardon, in 4.5, when you say including the plans for future years, you don't specify which future years. It's all very well, Mr. Jacobs, to say it's quite a normal thing to say that you're going to need more staff, but in effect, what you're building in here by not limiting the number of years is suggesting that we're going to be taking on ever-increasing numbers of people in each and every year, but you're not telling us what number of years there are or what number of people. I'm a very simple person, and easy arithmetic is much better than a generality.
So in relation to the proposals before you today, we are trying to be very specific, as the financial implications show at the back of the paper in paragraph 7. So I think I hope we're at one on understanding that. Secondly, in relation to future years, it means the budget period that we have a budget for and which we have published, and figures, budget provision is built into those figures for future years provisionally, because we set a hard budget for 2017-18, and illustrative is a weak word, but a provisional budget clearly for future years going forward. Now, there are some things that it's easy to take a hard-edged decision on, i.e. the stuff that we definitely know about. The fact that we know, for example, that we've got a £3 billion housing programme to run, we can be more specific about staffing needs. But when, for example, let me use devolution to come back to that example. At the moment, we are almost certain to get a health devolution settlement from the government. Chancellor announced it in March. The memorandum of understanding on that, we know where that is. It's sitting inside number 10 at the moment. We are trying to get that into the open air as quickly as possible, and that will bring responsibilities which will need to be worked out over the coming period into this organisation. Can I forecast with any certainty now what that will mean in staffing terms? No, it's pretty difficult to do. So we make some budget provision which we hope will be enough this year, and looking forward we may have to return to it next year.
And Chairman, so just to add in on the point about future years, so the budget the Mayor publishes after a consultation with the Assembly runs to March 2021, so that gives us, from now, a 4-year view, and what Jeff is saying is that all the proposals that are consulted on today are affordable within that 4-year view. And Juliet, I know that you could say, well, that's only a 4-year view. What about year 5? Really, could you make a position permanent? If you can't prove you can afford it in year 5, because we haven't forecast that far forward. But my understanding is, leaving aside the challenges about forecasting so far into the future, that from a legal perspective, anybody who was fixed term essentially assumes full employment rights in any case when you're getting up to 4 years. And so in that case, there's no additional risk to the authority by having a permanent position rather than a very long fixed term one.
I understand that. Over many years, dealing with smaller budgets, but again related to local authorities, it's quite a common practice, isn't it? Perhaps this is one for you, Mr. Clark. It's quite a common practice for you to pad out a base budget by putting in it, well, we need to have provision for future years, and the following year, your next budget builds on the base budget, which has included the padding in the first year, and so on and so on. A cynic might say, and I'm not one of those, that this is a way of padding out a budget.
Well, can I just say that historically, if you look back at what we've done on staffing, we have absolutely reduced and looked at reducing where we've been able to over the years, irrespective of budget provision, and we have absolutely increased where we have had to too. And I used 2012 as the example because it was in 2012 that the LDA was abolished, and when we took on the London HCA, and we had to take more staff, and we had to budget accordingly to do that. We have not bloated the budget for staffing purposes. We have tried, absolutely not. It's not something that is in my nature personally to do.
I think without wishing to rerun the budget argument particularly, I think the reason for suspicion and potential cynicism amongst members, as you know, the arguments, we've spoken about this in private as well. Yes, we did reduce staffing in this building over many years. We're now putting it back up again. We've just been through a budget process, and the Mayor's refusal, point blank, to give even an indicative number about how many new staff would be required and would be paid for by the budget the Assembly was asked to approve in February is what is leading to this kind of questioning, I think, because Assemblymember Arbour has put the case that actually this is how you could pad a budget. There could be more money in the budget, because the decisions that have to be taken on a budget is about opportunity costs. So taxes went up this year, cuts to police budget and everything else all happened this year. And if you're going to put money into something, it means you're taking it from somewhere else. And I think this is the reason why Assembly members are uncomfortable with the lack of details being put forward up to this point in time. And that's why these questions are going to repeat, I think. Right, without rerunning the budget argument, I've seen Assemblymember Prince and Assemblymember Copley. I'll take them in that order. And Assemblymember Berry.
Most of what I was going to say has been covered by Assemblymember Arbour, so I won't repeat that. Only to say that, Mr Jacobs, with the greatest respect, I think your example of the NHS taking over control, that's a bit of a red herring. because if the government devolve NHS responsibility...
Do you mean the HCA?
Sorry?
Homes and Community Agencies, not the NHS. We're not
They're
taking
not-
the
they're
NHS.
not
sorry.
taking the NHS.
You said the NHS.
Oh, did I? All right, sorry.
That wouldn't be a good idea.
Well, you know, you can trust the Conservatives with the NHS, so we won't worry about it. Right, yeah. If we have more powers devolved to us, then clearly the respective budgets will come with them, won't they?
Well, you say that.
Well,
If that's, can you guarantee that's the case?
We have.
We always try to ensure that happens, but you know it's not unusual to be not bloated but duffed up when government passes responsibilities across. And we will absolutely have our eye out. If, for example, we take on skills in the adult education budget, one of the things that we are looking very carefully at, that we don't get screwed in the process, that we do manage to take. But
I'm glad you said get screwed in a public meeting. The second one, copy.
Yeah, it might just be me not having looked with enough of a fine-tooth comb. But in paragraph 4.4, well, first of all, paragraph 4.4 talks about the increase in FOIs, correspondence, emails, etc., the public liaison unit. Well, first of all, to what extent is that because we've got a new mayor, and to what extent is that happening, increasing year on year?
I mean, it's difficult to answer that question really, because you probably need another year to find out, don't you?
But would you expect? I mean, in the first year of a new mayoralty, is there a
yes
balance?
and no, but the increases are pretty savage. And I don't particularly mean, but I'm about to give you the figures. I don't particularly mean on Mayor's questions. I mean on some of the other activity. But if you take Mayor's questions as the first example, the comparative period of 15-16. 16-17, 15-16 on May to March is 4125, and the figure that I think I put in the paper on the similar figure is 4628 as a matter of fact. On FOIs, I can't see particularly why that, although inevitably some of it has got to do with a new mayor and the politics of that, but a 43% increase. I mean, that's huge. The amount of pressure that is going into public correspondence, again, very high. And we're excluding, when we give the figures that I put in here, campaign activity. So even if, I think you are inevitably right that some of this has got to do with the new mayor, we're definitely on an upward curve. There's no question about that.
Which brings me to my next question, which might just be that I've missed something in this very long document. But looking at the new jobs in external relations, there's external relations including the PLU, but I've seen the list. It all seems to be in digital. So, are all the posts, are some of these digital posts going to be devoted to dealing with some of the issues in this paragraph? Because I would have thought if we're seeing this huge increase in correspondence and things like that, you need people to deal with correspondence.
Emma?
So some of the posts are in a digital or social media and a communications side of the world.
Understand
some of them
that.
are more purist digital. With the public correspondence thing, it affects both the public liaison unit team, but also the whole business, because of course the PLU team can't answer every question they receive. They get farmed out across the policy team, so that the pressure, while there is additional pressure on the PLU, and we're bringing in new processes to absorb that with our current headcount, we are also putting pressure on the business units, of course, have more correspondence to answer. So the environment team, the housing team, the numbers of pieces of correspondence that they have to respond to, which we help manage, also going.
You're not creating more jobs in the PLU?
Within PLU, no.
It's the part of the proposal for external relations is about confirming some of the existing digital posts, including digital transformation, which will allow us to do things like look at the systems that are used around the building to deal with this correspondence.
Right,
so
I understand.
We can manage it more the load more efficiently.
I understand
it's
that.
Fair to say that system is somewhat creaking.
And I'm not, I think the way things are changing a lot. The new website's fantastic. We probably do need jobs in digital, but I was just struggling to understand. This paragraph here would suggest you need more posts in the PLU. It doesn't suggest to me that you need more posts in digital.
Yeah, I think what I would say, which I think is, if I heard it rightly, I'm slightly deaf on that, that Emma was saying that a lot of this stuff, I'm talking about the loading across the organisation. You get more correspondence in at this level. A large chunk of it is just moved out to the policy teams who've got to help answer. Ditto mayor's questions. This stuff has to be farmed out to people to provide. So it's the wider impact that I'm primarily talking about, not just the impact on external relations.
Okay.
Part of the work that we're doing with PLU, though, is to look at where we can make that whole piece more efficient. So we've done a digital review across there, and we'll look to see how we can encourage people to use the website more and have new digital tools to be able to deal with the pressure, because I expect this to carry on. So that will also help not only just the PLU team, but also across the business. So that's part of our digital development plans.
So remember Barry.
Thank you. Can I check whether we are able to ask questions about any of the papers, or are we focused on paper?
Well, this is a general sweep up, so...
yeah, so I've got two questions then in that case.
Yeah.
The first one's from item 5 on page 18, where you're talking about the new standard communities and intelligence director. Am I right that's the remit of Matthew Ryder, the deputy manager?
Well, partly.
Partly. Because I understand he's bringing forward some proposals for work to do, work I would support, but I'm wondering when that's going to come forward.
So there's quite a lot of thought going in by Matthew by what is currently referred to as you will know it as the Diversity Social Policy Team, which we are moving into a wider social integration team. Quite a lot of thought going at the moment, and you'll hear it when Matthew comes before the committee, into the development of the social integration policy area. And the reason I cannot bring staffing proposals forward today on that is precisely because that thinking is going on. When would I hope to bring it forward? Well, I think I would like to think it's May. It may be June.
Okay, so quite soon.
Quite soon.
Great.
Ditto on health, which is also part of the Communities and Intelligence Directorate. But I need this other stuff that I referred to earlier to come out of the wash first of all, so that we can take a clear review on it.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is about the housing and land.
Do you want to save it?
Yes, shall I?
Because we'll be coming on to that in a minute.
Great.
And we can look forward to that with great excitement. Same with Member Prince.
Thank you. Just going back to Assemblyman Coppola's first question and your, Mr Jacobs, your explanation that the number of questions is going up significantly and the FOIs are going up significantly. Could I ask...
Quality of Mayor's questions going up.
Pardon?
Sorry, Keith. Is the quality of Mayor's questions going up?
Well, certainly from certain areas it isn't, no. Could I suggest, or could I put it to you that possibly, and you might like to comment, that's one of the reasons why we're having an increase in Mayor's questions is because of the Mayor's reluctance to answer the question when it's asked, and resulting in a further question, and it's not to him.
It's a very exciting and entertaining line of argument. I don't think it's fair to ask officers to answer that.
No, okay. I was going to ask if David Bellamy.
Can I just
as an officer.
Can I just factually note that the number of MQT questions went up in May from 365 to 459, in June 357 to 499, and so that clearly was happening before the new mayor would have been having the opportunity to answer questions.
Possibly, because there might have been an election coming up. And the FOI requests, maybe I suggest that might be a 40% increase in FOIs because maybe there's an increasing lack of transparency.
Okay. Yes, excellent. That's now all on the record. Thank you, Member Prince. You don't need to answer that either. Although it would be entertaining to listen to you answer that, won't it?
Well, I thought it was quite creative, actually.
Okay, I think we've kicked this one hard enough. I'm keen to move on to the other papers. So the recommendations on page 13 are...
I'm very interested in debate about the budget. It's almost like a budget committee here where we've got the money to not... The justification of it, I think there's been one issue raised. So I think the digital officer on this paper is clear, manifesto commitment, mayor needs to get on and do it. I see, not reservations, but the head of paid service says, at the request of the Mayor's office, we have this additional Mayor's research officer. Can we just, I've just read the paperwork, sorry, paint me a picture of what these people are actually going to do, this person's actually going to do. Are they going to be tweeting all day, or are they, is it the monitoring role, what is it, and why is it in this section and not in the main, you've got a mayor, bloody mayoral media team. I don't know how many, I wouldn't say hundreds, they would say hundreds, I'd say quite a reasonable number of people supporting the mayor in media issues. Why does it have to be in the mayor's office, and would it not be best placed within the wider media team? Explain to me.
So we did on that last point first, we did consider where the best place for it to go was, and I know there was discussions with the head of media on that, and it was concluded that because of the way that this is very much a kind of a coordinating thing, a research thing, that it was best cited in the Mayor's office, given the teams that it will need to work with. That was just the conclusion that was reached, that was the best place for it to go. There's no particular other reason than that. In terms of the role, yes, monitoring of social media is part of it, but it's very much a coordination thing in terms of ensuring that material responses are produced and disseminated, and that involves working with, it's not just about, at times I'm sure that will be the press team, at times that will be teams in external relations, at times that will be colleagues in the Mayor's office, including mayoral advisors, and so it's very much a supporting and coordinating role to ensure that the Mayor's office is able to react quickly. Because I think what we're seeing now, stepping back a bit, is in the past one could write to the Mayor, and obviously that happens, and Jeff talked about what's going on there. One can try and bring an issue to the attention of the press, who then would raise it through the press office, and clearly all that activity continues. But now we're in a world where people can raise issues completely in public in a very visible way, and the nature of modern life is that these require quick responses. And what we found in the 9-10 months is that the team are at capacity, to be frank. I think that they're beyond capacity in terms of the hours that people are working, and it simply isn't possible to try and do this on top of the existing workloads.
So that does beg the question, and I think it was a very important point you've raised about modern way of communicating and issues of that. For amongst the engineers in monitoring what the Mayor says, I'm not rushing to put in a growth bid for the Secretariat, but in terms of monitoring that, but there could be important statements made by the Mayor that's relevant to it, but that's almost like what arrangements can be made to make those statements more accessible? Are they one-to-one statements, or are they to the world statements? If I tweet to the mayor something, is it a personal response I'm going to get back, as in this officer, or is this a global response?
So,
and what's the thinking about this position and this new way of working?
It would all be done publicly. I think it's fair to say that actually social media can be in certain situations a very good way of getting messages out. I think we saw it last week with the horrific events that took place, that actually the best way for the Mayor to get a message out to Londoners generally, but also to the media, was actually using social media channels to do that. And so clearly that's something that's done. It's very public, and everybody can see that. And absolutely, as we use whatever social media channels are appropriate. The Mayor recently started making some use of Instagram, which is very popular in certain demographics. All that is done publicly, and so it's absolutely available for everybody's scrutiny.
Well, we might need to think of ways of doing that, but thank you for that. Are you going to put these to us now, these two positions, or are you going to take them on block?
These two, I was going to put now.
Okay.
Assembly Member Prince, and then we're going to...
Just a quick question. Can I ask someone to turn to page 21, Appendix 1? Without the explanation, I just wondered if someone could just explain basically how the numbers work.
So we've got positions first of all, so our permanent positions and our fixed term positions in the first three columns. So they're the roles that are actually created on the establishment, either on a short-term basis or a permanent basis. And then we've got the employee numbers, and there's a difference in full-time equivalents and headcount, because headcount captures everybody, including maternity leave.
But they don't add up, do they? Does it mean?
So which bit? So the employee full-time equivalents will be different from the headcount numbers.
Well, I would assume that positions equate to headcount rather than to FTEs.
No, so headcount are the actual number of people who are employed by the GLA.
Yes.
So we'll have, so they don't match the positions because we'll have vacancies.
So this includes
staff,
vacant posts?
Secondments, yeah.
Right, okay, so that, I've got it now. Thank you.
Okay, right, members. Recommendation 1 on page 13 is that we respond to the head of paid service consultation. Well, we've kind of been doing that. So is that agreed, recommendation 1? Recommendation 2 is that the committee responds to the head of paid service consultation on the proposal to create a new digital officer and a new mayoral research officer in the mayor's office. We've not really quibbled with the chief digital officer, which is graded at 15, but the other one, my personal view, is that it's too high. I think it should be a 6, but do members agree with that?
Yeah. So you're saying that we've got reservations of the grading of the post?
Yes, not of the establishment.
I think it's fair, and in saying that, I think it's very interesting you say about it's looking at the wider mayoral office. I thought we had a policy GLA-wide. Shouldn't you be looking at the rest of the media team or other research posts? And maybe there's a problem with this title that will actually make this grade a lot lower than what you're proposing. And I do think, I would say this, and I think I've said this before in previous administrations, I'm not comfortable with the way the grading of positions go. There are all sorts of anomalies in this organisation about where you're treating staff on the same similar job type issues, but some significantly graded higher than others.
That, to be honest, that gets to the heart of what I'm saying. When you look at the spec for this post, it's not a managerial role, and yet a grade 8 in our offices is a managerial role. And it seems a bit odd. I mean, I know on the job spec that's in here, it says grade to be determined, but in the papers it suggests it's a grade 8.
Yeah, and we do have to go through a process, and we do look right across the organisation at jobs that are comparable to it. So we would look at your secretariat jobs, we would look at jobs in external relations and in the media team before determining the final evaluation of it.
We should look at the scrutiny of it and bring some ones before
Chair,
us.
maybe we suggest that this comes back again because once they've graded it.
No, I don't think we should come back again. I think we want to move forward, but I think there's a general point about gradings per se and how that certain people are favoured in this organisation. Let's call it as it is. Certain people are favoured in this organisation and others are not. That's the substance of the complaint about how we're doing
hearing the
gradings.
request for a more detailed briefing about how the grading process
No, I don't
works.
think so. I
but
think there's scrutiny in it.
It's hard to answer the question without knowing which particular roles you're talking about, but I'm happy to write back and tell you how we reach the final evaluation score and what roles we compare it to.
Yes, I mean, if I could interject here, I mean, we are obviously approaching the AGM now, so the chairmanship of this committee will change after the AGM, and Assembly Member Duval, subject to the Assembly approving it in a couple of weeks' time, will take over as chairman. At that time, it may be that you want to have a scrutiny session here on that subject, and that might actually be useful for members, I think, because if we're going to be seeing a lot more posts coming through, and I think it was indicated that we will see some understanding of how things get graded would be useful for members in terms of feeding into the consultation, so perhaps we can do that. Subject to those comments, members, do you agree to accept recommendation B, which is that we respond to the consultation? I think we've just done that. Is that agreed? Okay, thank you very much. Item 6 is the proposed changes to the GLA establishment relating to housing and land direction. This is the Royal Docks, and this is the 10 positions which are going to cost £659,000, but which will be repaid in full, I believe, from income coming through from the Royal Docks. I'll ask Mr. Luntz to introduce this.
Thank you very much, Chair. So we've got 2 housing and land reports, one on Royal Docks, which is before us now, and then a more generic report that deals with other posts across my directorate. We brought this one separately because, as you rightly say, this is a standalone project programme team that is
fully externally funded. I think it's important, first of all, to reflect on the fact that there are a tremendous number of projects underway and more due to launch very soon at the Royals. We've got very big projects with the new Pan-Asiatic Chinese business port, which ABP will be starting very soon. We've got a huge development site at Silvertown Quays. We've recently acquired the Siemens Crystal building. We're doing a lot of work at Thameside West with joint venture partners Keystone. Notting Hill Housing Association is building about 300 or 400 homes, etc., etc. There's a tremendous amount going on. I think the second thing to say is that the Royals represents the largest contiguous land ownership that the GLA has. And also, of course, since 2013, it's been an operational enterprise zone, London's first. So what does that all mean? That means that any additional business rate that is generated at the Royals can be recycled for the benefit of the Royals and wider interests in the capital. It also means, of course, that it's incredibly important that those projects that I've mentioned and others that we're keen to see come forward at pace to generate that business rate, because every month that elapses without those projects accelerating or coming forward not only slows down the pace of regeneration in Newham at the Royals, but also means that we do not achieve additional income which we can then use to fund infrastructure and other things. I think the other thing I would say is that we have managed the Royals here, I think pretty well, but we have been exceptionally stressed and stretched with the 4 staff that I've currently got in my strategic projects team who have been managing it. And consequently, in discussions, long discussions with London Borough of Newham and the new LEAP, the London Enterprise panel, we have come forward with these proposals. That will mean that the 4 staff that I've currently got working on the Royals will, subject to these appointments, become part of a larger team of 14 with 10 new posts created. And the team will be, as we've already mentioned, located down at the Royals. Very keen to get them on site. They will still be employed by the GLA, obviously, and they will report back here to my Assistant Director and to me, and obviously to the Mayor. But we think that now is really the time to get cracking with this. And as you will see from the posts that we're coming forward with here, and they are listed out on page 36, as well as a new Grade 14 Programme Director, the posts are looking to do a number of things. One is, very importantly, to do a lot more to promote investment interest and activity down at the Royals, because although there's a lot happening, there still aren't enough people around. The footfall is nowhere near what we need it to be, and there is still, I think, a bit of an absence, if I'm honest, in terms of a real joined-up story that we can go out and secure additional investment activity, additional interest. There's tremendous scope for meanwhile uses, cultural events and many other things, all of which will help to create more activity and all of which will help to generate additional business rates. And that is one of the reasons why we've looked for a team with the profile that's listed here. In addition to that, we are looking for project managers to support the quite complex and long-term work that is underway to not just bring forward new schemes on sites we own, but actually manage those complicated long-term multi-phase schemes like Silvertown Quays, like the ABP Royal Albert Dock scheme, and so on and so forth. Just to conclude, if I may, Chair, we have had, as I say, lengthy discussions with the London Borough of Newham, who have agreed now that they will pass over the business rate which they receive as a consequence of the enterprise zone income for the purposes of funding and supporting this team. Secondly, that team will be recruited openly, so we will be advertising it not just to colleagues in the GLA, but also to the London Borough of Newham. This is going to be a joined-up opportunity and offer to the London Borough of Newham. And the LEAP itself, of course, has now signed off on this approach and has agreed the principle of this budget and this team, the cost of which, as you rightly say, is estimated to be £649,000. And you will see on page 37, under 6.3, we are showing the income forecast. So this shows how much has been received already in terms of business rate to the enterprise zone. This year we are, or sorry, I should say next year, because we start the new financial year later this week, we are expecting to receive, in fact, more than the cost of this team, 850,000. Clearly what we're looking to do is to grow that as fast as possible, and certainly on the forecasts that we have run against what we know to be the current profile of new projects coming forward, we can expect that business rate to rise quite steeply during the period of the 21 years, I think it is, that remains for the enterprise zone revenue to be ring-fenced to London. I'll leave it there, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Luntz. Assemblyman Copley.
Thank you. Yeah, paragraph 4.7. It's a question about accountability. It says the Royal Docks Programme Director will report to both the GLA's Housing and Land Directorate and London Borough of Newham Director of Regeneration Planning. The GLA will retain full control over any GLA land and property related activity. What role will Newham have? Will they report to Newham on other matters? I'm just trying to work out exactly what the accountability is.
Yeah, I mean, the solid line reporting is back here. They're GLA employees. We will be responsible for paying rations and the formal responsibilities that go with reporting and accountability. However, we have set up an apparatus via the LEAP to bring together at both a politician level and a senior officer level a programme board and a steering board. And this new programme director will report to both of those. In addition, though, they will be reporting more regularly to Newham's Director of Regeneration and Planning to account for activity. So if you like, it's a dotted line to Newham, a solid line to the GLA, with a new governance apparatus that incorporates both senior officers from both organisations and senior politicians.
Thank you.
Remember. Assemblyman
I think this is quite an exciting proposal you've got here, and I suppose the success of it will come in later years. This head of promotions and investment, which is pretty unusual in terms of the numbers that are being put into a scheme like this, you've got here, there's asterisk saying, may include shared services agreements and consultancy work. Are we trying to, I mean, to get more bang for our bucks, is that envisaged that the Housing and Land might use them on other projects, or I'm thinking of Old Oak Common, taking them for advice about some of their work they're doing? What is the scheme? Is this just to stop Lendivo asking questions because it looks a bit odd and bizarre in a structure like this? Or is this genuinely going to be about some of this consultancy work? Will we be able to see it? Is someone going to get out and say, yeah, we've got some core work to do ourselves, but there isn't really enough to do on this particular project? They're not going to be, you know, realistically, it will come in peaks and troughs about full-time work. So who's going to be driving that? And I think that's quite exciting if that's going to happen, because I can see that. I can see that making sense. But unless someone does it, unless someone drives it out of this building, is that you or someone else?
Well, we'll certainly be driving it out of this building. I think, you know, one of the things about the Royals is that people forget it's the largest piece of inland water in the United Kingdom. Well, certainly human-made anyway. It's 4.5 kilometres of water, and we own it all. It's the most extraordinary thing. And yet at the moment, if you go down there, there's almost no use made of it. There's a little rowing club and a few other bits and pieces, and that's pretty much it. And of course, a lot of the things that are now beginning to come together on the dock edge, as well as the fact that we've got things like Excel already there, give it, you know, the most tremendous scope really to really create a lot of activity and a lot of interest. And so really that's primarily going to be the job that this individual and their little team will be responsible for. And we will set them some pretty ambitious targets around that. You rightly say though, Len, that, you know, there's a wider piece here about, you know, is there learning and other opportunities to collaborate with, you know, sites like Old Oak Common, to learn from some of the things that the LLDC have been doing and sharing. And absolutely right, that's critical to all of this. You know, the Mayor's made it very clear, I think, that, you know, he wants to see a much more integrated and coordinated effort across not just my team, but the MDC's, Transport for London's work on property and housing. And you can be assured that, you know, myself and Deputy Mayor James Murray take this very, very seriously. So this will be an endeavour that is focused on the Royals, but one that is shared much more widely across the group.
And Chair, we ought to think about this, because we do from time to time but for one of our plenary sessions in a year, 2 years' time, we ought to bring back and see how successful or not it's working and some of those arrangements. So think of that, some of the scrutiny around that. Good.
Okay, members. The recommendations are on page 33. I would move that we accept them. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you, members. Item 7 is the proposed changes to the GLA Establishment, Housing and Land. Mr Luntz, again.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is, as I say, a report which looks to make permanent a number of fixed-term arrangements across the rest of my directorate, as well as suggesting the creation of 4 new posts for particular purposes. I mean, in introducing this, I would just want to put a little bit of context around this. Clearly, the housing crisis, the Mayor has said, is his number one priority. We have successfully secured a £3.15 billion affordable housing settlement, and we are negotiating hard at the moment to win some more funding from the government's £1.4 billion of additional affordable housing monies, and we expect to settle that quite soon. So I think we can probably look forward to an affordable housing programme of maybe £3.5 or even more billion. And that represents something like a 50% increase in real terms on where we've been in recent years. But against that, of course, there is the target that the government have set us of at least 90,000 affordable starts by 2021. Again, this is a very, very significant increase on what we've been achieving in recent years. And so we need to think quite seriously about whether we've got the right resources in the team to support that endeavour. In addition to that, the Mayor has made it very clear that in a number of areas he wants to ratchet up the work that City Hall is doing, particularly around rough sleeping and homelessness, which is something where I think the Mayor's ambitions chime very directly with DCLG ministers' interest in doing a lot more to manage and tackle rough sleeping in London, which is one of the reasons why we've won significant additional funding, which will include paying for 1.5 of the 2 new posts here. And then in addition to that, more work around the private sector and doing more to try and raise standards in the private rented sector and certainly bear down on the very poor standard that exists from some road landlords. And I make those points because I think that new business and that extended business that we are going to be undertaking over the next few years is the reason for many of these new posts. In addition to that, we are suggesting that we consolidate some of the fixed-term posts around managing our housing zones programme. The reason for that is that we have had fixed-term posts now for up to 2 years, nearly 2 years in some cases. The housing zones programme has extended since those posts were recruited. What began as a £200 million programme then doubled to 400 million and has now extended again to 600 million. It's a long-term programme and very complex, so we do need, I think, to make permanent those fixed-term posts which are responsible for the contracting and reporting of the housing zones programme. And then finally, and this goes back to the point that was made a few minutes ago about a much more joined up and coordinated housing programme that really embraces not just what happens at City Hall, but what happens at Transport for London, what happens at the MDCs. We are creating a new single programme office to bring all of those activities together in a single Homes for Londoners reporting arrangement. And that is what sits behind the 2 new single programme office posts graded at 11, the strategic manager and the senior analyst. Just finally, I would say that notwithstanding the very considerable new business that we are generating and that I've summarised, you will see here that there are actually only 4 new posts being suggested here dealing with the single programme office and rough sleeping. 1.5 of those rough sleeping posts are externally funded by DCLG. The remainder of these posts are making permanent fixed term arrangements that we've had for some time, but which we now consider we certainly are going to need in the medium to long term.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Luntz. Unfortunately, we have crept up to 11 o'clock, so Assembly Members Twycross and I need to leave. I'm going to pass the chair to Assembly Member Duval. I think Mr. Bellamy needs to join me. I've told Assembly Member Duval that Assembly Member Berry had a delayed question on housing and Assembly Member Copley, so over to you then.
Okay, just before we take those members, just take us through. I'm looking at Appendix 1 on housing unit, housing zone managers contracting. And then I look to your investments and operations schemes. Why are they there and not, why can't they be incorporated into that? Is there about a different role? Can you just explain to me, but to the rest of the committee, how that works then? And just to, so we just want to be reassured that you know, that what the thinking is.
In,
in layperson's term, not necessarily in housing movement speak, but take us through it.
So, the responsibility for housing zones, if you like, kind of finding housing zones, working with the relevant boroughs and other partners, and then making sure that the housing zones actually deliver what they are supposed to deliver, sits with the area teams. Right, so that's the frontline operation. What we're talking about in terms of the contracting housing zones side of things is undertaking the detailed due diligence and sorting out the legal contractual arrangements and making sure that the reporting is all done in a consistent and rigorous way. So it's quite a specialist operation, and it's one that initially we thought we might only need for a short term, because once the housing zones are nailed down, that job should go. In actual fact, what we've found is that, number one, there are a lot more housing zones, and I'm not suggesting now we won't have more in the future, because we may well do, but in addition to that, it's very clear that housing zones do sort of change over time. There's a need for some flexibility, amendments, adjustments to contracts, etc. So in layperson's terms, this is a specialist contracting, due diligence, legal team. It's not responsible for the front-end relationship with the partners on the ground in the boroughs.
And would I be wise in thinking then that some of this is about capacity within those housing zones, that councils have got a reduced capacity to do some of this work? Because some of it would be their stock, their partners, with us, depending whether we want to give a subsidy or an interest in wanting to see it develop. Is that also why we're investing in this area?
Yeah, it's interesting because we've got 31 housing zones now, and I think some of those housing zones have gone very smoothly, and the boroughs, you know, are very competent and on top of things. That's not universally the case, Len. So sometimes we've had to step up and provide quite a lot of assistance, which we're on terms happy to do, but you're right, that is reflected in the need for resource here.
All right, let's begin with Sean then. Sean, you had some questions around it, and then we'll go to Tom.
Okay, my first question is about the private rented sector staff. Obviously, there's quite a lot to do there, and the paper outlines that. Am I right that you're not increasing the staffing there, you're just continuing staffing that's already there? How long have the staff that you're making permanent been there doing the work?
Are we talking about the
private rented sector manager and the senior project officer brackets private rented sector that are both down on the list
yes.
on page 82 as
yes.
being fixed term posts made permanent?
Yes, it's a grade 10 and a grade 8.
Yeah, so how long have they been there if they're just on a fixed term contract at the moment?
They were recruited early this year, I think.
So in 2017?
About a year.
Oh, sorry.
It's about a year. I couldn't be exact. I can let you know, but I think it's about a year.
I would like to know. I'm concerned that we're not seeing enough progress on the projects that you actually name in the paper to do with the database and things. And yeah, just wondering how long they've been doing the work already.
Yeah.
It's great that they're being made permanent, though. That's not a problem for me. The other question is, I've been asking questions, and so has Assembly Member Copley, this may be your question as well, about the staffing of the expert viability unit. I would have expected that to be somewhere in this organogram, but it might be that it's in a different directorate.
It's in planning. It's in the planning team.
That's under regeneration and planning, so
Yeah.
I can't ask you about that. That's great, I just wanted to check.
That's an interesting point. In terms of the crossover between what goes into planning, what goes into housing, how do you determine that?
Well, I think
so aspirations that one day
Yeah,
there might be...
Well, a number of the things here says ensuring delivery of affordable housing, yeah.
Sorry, do you want to...
Sorry, the new viability team is in planning. I think that's absolutely the right place for it to be. You know, their job is to, you know, get to grips with referred applications. So clearly, you know, the logical place to put them is in the planning team. Having said that, you know, the relationship between my team and the planning team is exceptionally close, and you know, we work very closely with the viability team, work exceptionally closely with the London Plan team. So it's a porous boundary.
And the two executive directors, him being one, Fiona the other, are sitting a yard from each other, facing each other.
Fascinating conversation. On this point, Peter, or is it a new point?
Yes.
Fine, then I'll bring Tom in and then I'll bring you next.
First of all, there's interest to read about the single programme office. Am I to take it that this is being set up to create a more coordinated and consistent approach across the GLA group in terms of land disposal and property development? Is that correct?
The single programme office is there primarily to make sure that basically we know what's going on across the
what's
piece.
going on.
In one place we can say this is how many homes are being built, these are the kinds of homes that are being built. So that specifically is what the programme office is there for. But you're quite right, Tom, that you know, we are also very keen and doing a lot of work to try and get a little bit more coordination perhaps in terms of the way that we approach things like site disposals and procurements, and
given that
so
some
forth.
TfL and the Met Police have taken, understandably for their own reasons, very different approaches to their strategies. Okay. That's all I wanted to ask. The other thing I wanted to say was I actually found it quite interesting going through all this. You learn things about the Mayor's programme you didn't realise, like a 16,000 target for build to rent, which I had no idea existed, but there we are.
Okay, Peter.
Yeah. David, just a factual question I want to ask. You've got a creation of a new post for rough sleeping project manager. Can you just give me an overview of the rough sleeping, as it were, team at the moment? I mean, how big is it here at the moment?
I think there is, which might be helpful, a chart.
Yes, I've just been having a look, and it's a little bit confusing. I just want to...
Sorry, I'm just trying to find the right... which page is it?
It's on page 86, is that right?
Should be here somewhere. Yeah. So page 90, I think.
90.
Is... So you will see there that... On Appendix 1, page 90.
Right.
So there's a post called a Services and Commissioning Manager, which is responsible for both the rough sleeping team and also the housing mobility team. The housing mobility team is not part of the rough sleeping.
So how big is the team?
The team is the rough sleeping manager, new post grade 10, grade 7, another grade 7, and then a project officer. So 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
Plus a senior manager who looks after them.
Okay. It just strikes me as being a little bit on the small side.
I apologise to the committee for my lack of ambition.
No, I know that we should usually be stripping things away, but I mean, I thought, you know, given that this is an extraordinarily big problem in London.
It is. I think the thing to say is that the reason it's not a very large team is partly because a lot of the service provision is undertaken by boroughs.
Right.
And we quite specifically look after the areas where there is a pan-borough or pan-London responsibility that isn't picked up specifically by individual boroughs. That's the first thing to say. The second thing I think to say is that the job of this team is mainly to commission and manage services that we procure. So although there aren't that many staff, with the new money that we've won from DCLG, we're looking at a programme over the next 3 years of something like £40 million of services that we then buy to undertake these sort of pan-London or cross-borough arrangements. So what sits beneath it is quite a lot of activity.
Right. You know, just
very efficiently managed by a tiny team.
Okay. With the different boroughs, I mean, is there consistency in the activity in the boroughs, or does it vary? You know?
It varies.
Right.
It does vary.
Right. Okay.
And that's one of the issues that we're picking up in the new arrangements that we've got to bring boroughs and street homelessness services and the health service and others together in the Mayor's new rough sleeping task force, which the Deputy Mayor James Murray chairs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more contributions? Okay, a number of posts here to go forward. Okay, agreed. Along with my grumpy rant earlier on around Bradings per se, we'll take that as will run continuously through. Okay, let's turn to the film unit then. Emma, do you want to introduce it?
I would. So the External Relations Unit
Of course.
comprises of marketing, design, digital events, commercial partners and the Public Liaison Unit. Its key role is to communicate and promote activities of both the Mayor and the London Assembly. The team works across all the policy areas in the building and all the programmes in the building to engage with Londoners and to be responsive to their needs and wants. This proposal includes a number of fixed-term posts being proposed to return permanent to continue support on developing the london.gov.uk website and digital engagement more broadly with Londoners. So these roles across marketing, brand, digital teams will enable us to sustain our services on an ongoing basis, bring new digital skills in-house where this is the most cost-effective option to do so, and enable us to significantly increase digital engagement. Overall, the growth is in response to an increased desire to deliver new and innovative programmes across the policy areas, alongside a desire to do much more communication across our digital channels, particularly in this new mayoralty. Every policy area in the building wants to deliver information and services to Londoners digitally, particularly with new programmes now under development. And digital solutions will enable us to tailor information to specific audiences and provide facts and information in a much more engaging way. Looking ahead, there's a whole bunch of new digital programmes that are starting to develop. Just a small summary of these includes the digital tech talent pipeline, work on the London curriculum sites, the London Borough of Culture, a vehicle emissions tool, regeneration crowdfunding work, the criminal landlord database, and a property portal for affordable housing. Some of the skills that are required to do these things, such as business analysis, are not held in-house, and while we can buy in these skills, they are very costly. So taking the 2 business analyst posts within this document, it will cost us 3 times as much to source these externally. And looking forward, I don't doubt there'll be many more digital projects coming up over the coming months, so it seems more sensible use of budget to bring those posts in-house. Len, you mentioned video and photography. These skills are also in high demand and actually, from a freelance perspective, are very costly, so bringing them in-house is also popular and sensible. Video content is in huge demand across social media and is viewed extensively by the more than 90% of people who have internet access, and huge amounts of time spent on social media in general across London and the UK. Just to say finally, the demand for digital products and digital engagement is not going to go away. This is the way Londoners consume information today, and it will be more important in the future. We've considered really carefully how we best develop external relations skill sets to deliver possible digital outcomes and engagement for Londoners in constructing this set of proposals.
And essentially, you're responding to the market trends that go on in your business and communications, aren't you? And you've really done a reorganisation here. In another way, not just for the budget process, we'd have this before us to say you'd upgrade in these areas. Okay, I'm going to come back to you. How much you should be able to tell me this one. So how much are we saving by bringing some of the, moving from freelance to bringing it in-house?
I haven't added it up the whole across the
But you can supply that to the committee, could you?
I can certainly give you some indications on what the market rates are for some of these posts that we're looking
Okay,
from
well,
on a freelance basis.
I think
yes.
people would like to see that because I think there are some issues around that, particularly in your business. I'm open up for questions. I might come back for seconds. Or I can get back at Sean.
Just to say, I actually quite fully support these proposals. I've worked in marketing and things, actually, Peter. And bringing things in-house, you genuinely get better quality as well as saving money because you're not briefing people who may misunderstand you. So I really like it. I like the fact there's apprentices in the structure too because these are industries which it's hard to get into. So I'm pretty happy with all of this. I think something I only discovered recently is that some of these in-house staff are available to assembly members.
Yes.
And I think maybe that could be more, that could be communicated by one of these staff, maybe a manual for assembly members of how to request digital, the video people, for example, we discovered too late that they were available potentially to us to video an event where we've made our own arrangements. So, yeah, just keep communicating with the assembly and I think this will lead to improvements. So.
Okay, other contributions on this area? Okay, all right. I would have thought this would have sparked some debate, some controversy, or...
Well, the real controversy relates to being servant of two masters, all of this, the Mayor and the Assembly. Shana's just made a very valid point. I didn't know about the availability of these services to the Assembly. I always thought you were the creature of the Mayor. Not you, of course. And I'd be quite interested to see a breakdown of the services that you have provided in the past in relation to the split. And of course it goes over other administrations as well, to the Mayor.
I don't have a fully committed breakdown of what we do.
But you must have some kind of...
I can give you a summary. So when you take...
can you say, is it 60-40 services to the Mayor or something of that kind?
No, I don't think I can. But if I pick out because some of the things that we do, of course, cover both. So the website work covers both. We deliver a number of events, so marketing for things like People's Question Time, and so London Debate, the delivery of those events, Armed Forces Day, Holocaust Memorial Day. There's a whole bunch of things that actually is working together across both the Mayor and the Assembly. In terms of the point on video, we've actually only had any in-house video capability in about the last 2 or 3 months, so it's not something we've been that you've missed out on for a very long period of time.
I see. But I think I think it will be interesting because there are relatively few things which are, how should I put it, could kind of be identified, badged with the Assembly. You know, and certainly Mr. Williams knows and Mr. Jacobs knows, we've always seen ourselves as the poor relations compared to the Mayor.
I think that's fair, but I've got to say, and I will say this, since Emma has been there, coinciding with the work that Andrew Boff did on marketing and branding issues, whether I thought the content of the leaflet was dubious in certain parts, the joint leaflet explaining the roles of the Assembly and Mayor, I think they've been done very well and working cooperatively between both sides. I think, it is quite interesting. I take the point that David said earlier on. Things have changed. Things are changing more rapidly in terms of how we need to respond and understand, and that will increase, and that means there will be a change in the way people work around this, and it'd be interesting to see how this develops and whether at some stage it changes even further because of different platforms and the way that we communicate.
Absolutely. I would say that we're keen to do as much as work as we can with the members, and I know that Natalie Taylor, who's within the digital team, has been meeting each of the members separately. I've got a list. Not all of you are on it yet, so no doubt we'll be in touch with you soon. So we are proactively seeking opportunities to look at how we can build your website content and make new developments as part of the work that we're doing. So.
It should be a great conversation with me then, I would have thought. Katie.
I was just worth saying, if it comes to video, we've got a video facility within the Assembly's External Relations team. So if we're actually looking for video support on committee work, we can provide that from the Assembly's point of view. I don't know if it's something you're looking for as an individual member or...
It was an individual member event that we wanted to record.
In which case that's probably outside of our responsibility.
Certainly, these things are developed, don't they, over time, issues and resources and availability. And the event, in terms of that's being undertaken. Can we...
I was just going to say, because I don't know whether it's worth... Because we had great engagement over the new website, which is, fantastic, and Natalie was very good at that. I don't know whether it's worth having a briefing for members at some point, just to explain what is available to us from your team, and things like that.
Good. Okay, can we agree with these posts then?
Agreed.
For the changes, thank you. Then move on to environment. Welcome, Patrick. Give us your opening pitch then.
Last but not least. So I'll just give you the headlines and then some of the context, and then happy to take questions. So the proposals you have in front of you are to create 7 new permanent posts within the environment unit and make 2 fixed-term contract posts, current fixed-term contract posts, permanent. So breaking that down, that's 2 permanent new posts in this, what we're calling the Zero Carbon Policy Team. And that relates to the manifesto commitment to be zero carbon by 2050. 4 new posts in the energy efficiency team relating to the same manifesto commitment. 1 fixed term post becoming a permanent post in the waste team. And that mainly relates to the manifesto commitment to get us on track to being having a 65% recycling target. 1 new permanent post in the green infrastructure team, which relates to a range of manifesto commitments around making 50% of London green, the National Park City commitment, and also embarking on a major tree planting initiative, and 1 fixed term post becoming a permanent post in the air quality and hydrogen team. And that relates to a whole range of air quality manifesto commitments, mainly focused at getting us within legal compliance on air quality as quickly as possible. Just in terms of the process that we've been through to identify the requirement for these posts, I think we've been through 3 budget rounds involving mayoral directors, where essentially what we've done is we've evaluated what resource we have in the team and what resource we need to deliver the 20 plus new environmental manifesto commitments that the Mayor made prior to the election that are now being translated as we speak into policy and delivery. The majority of that is new work over and above the statutory tasks and existing commitments that the environment team already have. So for example, that it can include delivering on the existing environment strategies, supporting the delivery of London Plan policy, statutory mayoral powers that relate to things like waste and conformity around air quality, urban greening projects and policy, and then some major delivery programmes that we've captured external funding for, some European, some national, some international, that mainly relate to things like energy efficiency, through to providing technical support to help deliver decentralised energy. We have looked at our fixed term positions, and we've looked to fill the permanent roles that are becoming available primarily with fixed term positions. But it is worth pointing out that a lot of our fixed term positions within the environment team are linked to specific funding agreements, and they have requirements to deliver specific tasks, all of which support these manifesto commitments. But that we will be losing some of those fixed term posts as we move forward during this mayoralty, and some of those are listed within the paper. We've looked to drop existing work where we can. We've dropped the capital clean-up programme, food save work, which is about getting SMEs to reduce their food waste. The funding for that has come to an end, so we're looking to integrate that with the work we're doing with Elwall. And we have reduced our permanent headcount by 1 post within the energy supply team. So I just thought it's just worth reflecting on the manifesto commitments we now have within the environment team. So they range from making London a zero carbon city by 2050. Previously it was an 80% reduction in CO2 emissions by 2050. There's quite a big difference between being a zero carbon city by 2050 and having an 80% reduction in CO2 emissions. Obviously, we're looking to become legally compliant around air quality, and that's, that has been a struggle nationally and for the city to achieve that, as you've seen in the media. And we've been making great steps, I think, with TfL to get us on track to achieving that. And we're also looking to increase recycling rates to 65%. Our current recycling rate for household waste is about 33%, and that's by 2030. We're going to need a step change, I think, in terms of delivery on our environmental programmes. We also made a commitment to this, to the Assembly, repeatedly, to produce a new environment strategy once we had a change of administration. So we're also right in the middle of taking 6 statutory strategies and 2 non-statutory strategies and producing a single environment strategy by the end of spring. And that will set out in more detail about how we are aiming to achieve these manifesto commitments. So that's pretty much what we're doing within the environment team. Happy to take questions.
Okay, well, my start off at 10. The crossover between the environment team and the planning team in London Plan and your role in that, and how do we avoid duplication? Am I going to find out if I ever bother to read the staffing chart of the planners? There are people here with similar titles doing the London Plan work, but obviously you're contributing to London Plan work by very much of the state, by your strategies work that you're doing, which I'd expect to be incorporated in the London Plan at some stage if it's not quite ready in the first stage. And then secondly, much that, there is a real crossover of work, and I can't, the air quality work is quite interesting. Frankly, I just want it done. I don't care who does it, right, in some ways. But looking at the hydrogen issue and the weights given in this document towards that, would it not be best placed that you have a major role in the development of those issues, but it would be best placed in an operational environment, TfL, in terms of developing those issues? Take us through that and just give us some, well, hopefully you will be able to reassure us that, these are all in the right place and the right locations. Do you know what I mean?
So can I take the first two first?
Also, could I give you another one? So while you're thinking,
I haven't written down the third one.
Give me. So if I come to you and knock on your door and say, what's the GLA doing about noise? Where does that fit into it? Because I don't see anyone dealing with noise, and I thought that would have been quite an interesting environment consideration. Is it your brief then, a little bit of it, or what? Where do I come to? Signpost me that if I've got a resident who says noise issues and all the rest of it on environment.
What was the third question?
Sorry?
What was the third question? So I've got London Plan policy.
It's almost like how do you avoid duplication? London Plan issues in relation to environment, hydrogen in relation to TfL issues, and those. And I'm not saying you don't have a role, but where's it best placed? What's the best driver of these issues and the driver of change that we want to achieve? And what happens on little things like noise? As we start on, I might shut up then and we'll let other people come in.
Can I answer them?
Yeah, go on, go for that.
So we contribute to all the planning policy around the environment. So that primarily comes out of the environment team, and then it's translated into London Plan policy. We review all the major planning applications. The planning team do flag up, there are these issues, but we tend to look at all of them. We review all the things like the energy statements, etc. We have consultants that support us in doing that to make sure that what the developers say they're going to deliver in terms of CO2 reduction actually stacks up. So that's kind of a good operation, I think, in terms of how it works. Hydrogen, we're asking for one post to take forward hydrogen, which is to support the Hydrogen London Partnership. That convenes all those delivery partners that you just talked about. So it's brought in about 50 million. And a good example is the buses that you see going up and down out here. So we convene the people to come together to capture the funding to enable that to happen, but we're not responsible for the delivery of that. So that's TfL that will take that forward. Noise sits within the transport team, but it does it's a legal requirement in the London Environment Strategy, so we're responsible for pulling together exactly how we'll take forward action on noise.
I thought you might have seconded out to the nighttime economy bit or whatever, but that will come later, no doubt, when we look at them a little bit more. Sean?
Okay, I'll just focus my questions on this. Obviously I'm glad to see the environment team is increasing its number of posts. My question is about the Energy for Londoners expansion side of things. Not noted in section 4.10 on page 202 is that, 4.11 actually, is that subsequently to writing the manifesto commitments, the Mayor also committed to producing a fully licensed energy supply company as part of Mayor's questions too. That is reflected in section 4.27. And so, looking at the new post that you've created to support this, which is in the organogram on page 222, you've got a senior project officer for energy for Londoners, and that's a grade 8 post. Now,
Yes.
Considering what we were talking about earlier, where there's a grade 8 post who is mainly in charge of tweeting, this seems to be rather an underpowered post, potentially. Are they going to have enough oomph to get this done?
Yeah, so part of this suggested reorganisation is primarily around delivering the commitment around energy for Londoners. So the grade 12, who's responsible for energy efficiency, will be responsible for pulling together and setting the strategic direction on all, because we use energy for Londoners as a sort of umbrella term to start with, on all our energy efficiency and supply initiatives. So that will be their role. Included within that will be the delivery of the supply company. The grade 11, so this paper details new posts. The grade 11 that sits within that energy efficiency team will be responsible for delivering the energy supply company.
Senior manager for programme delivery.
I think it's strategic programme manager.
I must admit I got slightly confused between senior and strategic and projects and programmes when I was looking through the various job descriptions in it.
So it's this post here. So they'll be responsible for delivering the supply company, and then the grade 8 will actually help with the programme management of the whole of the Energy for Londoners programme, but also support the delivery of the supply company. So at the moment we've got because we've got the existing structure, we've got half of three quarters of the grade 10 working on establishing the supply company. We're moving to it sitting with a grade 12, a grade 11 and a grade 10 to support that.
And you're confident that's enough staff to get this done?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the option that we go down to deliver the supply company. So if we create a separate supply company, then there'll obviously have to be staff associated with delivering that. But to get us to the position where we have established which is the preferred option and to make that happen, that is sufficient resource.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions on this area? Okay, we've got 9 posts, 7 new and 2 full-time moving to permanent, isn't it? Or, two to permanent. 2 to permanent. Okay, can we agree those? And thank you very much. Thank you very much. And let's move on then to item 10. Allocation of assembly budget. I presume it's Ed who's going to do this.
Peter and I can answer questions, Chair, but obviously it's been subject to discussion.
Is there anything you need to tell us first before we... Are there any questions that members want to put on item 10 of the allocation of the Assembly budget? Okay, then we are asked to agree the overall proposed allocation of the Assembly budget for 2017-18 as set out in the report. That's agreed. Okay, moving on to item 11, proposed changes to GLA standing orders. I think this is fairly straightforward. This is mainly to do with the new fire engine.
Solely to do with the new, the fire committee chair. So, as in 2011 with the police and crime committee, this is incorporating statutory provisions into the authority standing orders.
Okay.
Essentially, no more, no less.
Okay, and we're asked to respond to various bits, and I think the response is we are happy.
Agreed.
Yep, agreed.
So
Thank you very much.
Consultation with the mayor now.
Sorry?
Just to clarify, Chair, it's about the next stage is consultation with the mayor, and then it comes back to the annual meeting for formal incorporation.
Can I ask a point of clarification? On our standing orders, I mean, do we set those ourselves, or is it in conjunction with the mayor?
The Assembly approves the standing orders for the authority, but it has to be in consultation with the mayor.
In consultation with the mayor. Just checking. We've never changed the standing orders while I've been here, so.
Item 12 then, the work programme for the GLA Oversight Committee. Are there any questions around this?
Sorry, Chair, just to indicate that I think on May it says allocation of Assembly Member Services budget. That was because that paper came in May 2016 because it was the post-election time. So just to say that you've just agreed the allocation. of the budget, so that won't come up again in May.
Okay, so we're being recommended to delegate authority to the chair in consultation with the deputy chair and party group leaders to make proposals in relation to committee work programmes for consideration agreement for the first meeting of the GLA Oversight Committee after the 2017 annual meeting. That's agreed. And then the date of the next meeting, subject to confirmation of the annual meeting of the Assembly on the 3rd of May 2017. The next meeting of this committee is scheduled to be held on Tuesday the 16th of May 2017 at 3:30 in Committee Room 2. Thank you. Item 14, any other urgent business? There is no urgent business. I now declare this meeting closed. Good.